How's it going, John?
It is going well tonight, Eric. How are you?
Doing good. Coming up on 4 years of that intro.
Well, yes. Yes.
Don't mess with a good thing, I suppose.
Oh, there goes one of my dogs. Barky, barky. Anyway. Plenty of coyotes out tonight, I'm sure. Anyway, it's all good. It's all good.
So, more dog barking is the end result of that.
I'm sorry if dog barks come through on the podcast. I forgot to lock them in doggy jail before I came downstairs. So basically just close the dog. Make sure they're inside first so they don't crash their nose onto the dog door that's closed from the inside. But yeah, close the door so they can't go out and bark.
Right.
Anyway, it's all good. It's all good. Mm-hmm. It won't materially impact the quality of our recording. So, how was your weekend?
I think most of it was hanging out around the house, just doing chores around the house because half the family decided to go to the beach, I believe, and explore the beach. So
and the
it was
other
mostly
half,
me, just
including you, stayed home.
Yes, working on some other random things around the house.
That's okay. That's okay. Hey, so did pausing the print work last week?
Yeah. So for the follow-up, no, it did not.
Oh, sad trombone.
It leaked a big blob, and then when it kicked off again, it did not function as advertised. So I had to reprint the whole thing.
Or expected.
Yeah. But on a positive note, the other follow-up bit, the lost iPhone last week.
Okay, yeah.
It was downtown somewhere. Because Wednesday we did the podcast, and then Thursday we retrieved it. So I drove her down Thursday afternoon because they were closed until they're only open for the extended weekend, Thursday through Sunday.
Okay.
And so we drove down, and they open at 4 p.m. on Thursday. So we went down right about opening time because figured it'd be less noisy and we could hit the little button because someone had found it and started charging it again because we could see it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we get to the front desk. There's a cover charge, and it's Quarter World. It's an arcade, an arcade. But in true Portland fashion, it's an arcade/bar. So
okay.
we went to the front, where they get your cover charge, and she's like, "Nope, we don't have it in Lost and Found, but you might want to check at the bar." Okay. And right then, I'm like, "Well, maybe that's why you couldn't find it last week." Someone had found it and turned it into the bar. Luckily, someone had plugged it in the bar. So while I'm sitting there at the front, I go to the phone and hit the button to make it play a sound, and I walk back to the bar. And sure enough, the bartender is sitting there looking at the phone, trying to figure out, now, how do I turn this? They were just trying to make it quiet.
Be quiet. You're like, you can make that quiet by handing it to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it has a message on it, call or text this number. This is lost. And they've had it and seen that message. No one did it. And they weren't going to do it again. They were just trying to make it quiet. I'm like, okay. So, so I go back and say, hey, I think that one is for me. That noise, you don't want that noise? She said, oh, really? Is this yours? Yes, please. So we did retrieve the phone. And good to know that the reason it was not found was not because it was behind, fell behind an arcade machine or between somewhere or had been stolen. It was just at a bar where an underage kid was not able to go look for it at. So, yeah. All good.
Oh, that's awesome. It is a mystery why they wouldn't have, texted or called the number that's on the screen saying his phone is lost.
I have no idea because I hit that, as soon as it started recharging and we saw that it charged again, I hit the button a few times. I'm like, someone has plugged it in. Someone's close enough to do something with it. But that was during the week. So it must have just been, my guess is, since it's not open, it wasn't open at that time. It was maybe someone in cleaning crew saw it and thought, oh, and just plugged it in or set it on a charger, figuring it fell off, and then walked away and, started running the vacuum again or something, and didn't hear it. So, but whatever. All good. Found it.
Phone recovered.
Phone recovered.
I'm happy to hear that.
And then for you, how goes the Yurt?
The Yurt was fully constructed. It's a bit of a rough 2-foot step up into it. But anyway, because we did a little bit of a platform underneath it, but
right.
But it is fully constructed. So we went out. I basically took Friday afternoon off and got everything loaded up. Got out to the coast, and it was, Eric, I live in Oregon.
It rains.
Have all the rain gear. You know what I did not take with me, even knowing that it was supposed to be raining? Rain gear.
Suntan lotion.
Yeah. So the Yurt guy had actually told me, hey, let's get as much done as we can Friday because it's supposed to start raining on Saturday at 3.
Right.
To which I was like, oh, okay, that sounds good to me. I thought he meant 3 p.m. And Dark Sky was not very accurate in its weather forecast. I'm going to blame Dark Sky. It's Apple's fault. Because, my weather app that I use didn't actually, say anything bad. It was like, yeah, no precipitation. I mean, it had 25% chance at the max on the day, but I was like, whatever. Anyway, so we go out, got out there pretty late Friday by the time I got everything loaded, and then drive out there but we got a good 2.5 or 3 hours of work in Friday night, to the point where it was totally dark, and he had brought some lights, which were fine, except that they attracted so many bugs that you had to be careful holding your breath if you were having to do something around where one of the lights were, because the bugs you'd be breathing in insects. That was really bad. We eventually were like, I think we're done for tonight, because rain would be more pleasant than this. So anyway, that was pretty funny. I know I breathed in at least one bug, and yeah, it is what it is.
I'm debating whether or not I should point out something that you probably have with you for the last year that might help with breathing in bugs. But
say mask. Yes, we all did have masks with us. No, I didn't even think about that. Yes. Okay. Well, anyway. Anyway, we basically,
it's easy to armchair quarterback. It's easy to armchair quarterback.
2020 hindsight. Which, by the way, I think that my eyesight explanation last week was correct. I did Google that.
Did you look that up?
I did.
Good.
I did.
Good. I learned something now.
There you go. Yeah. Anyway, and that was, for anybody who didn't listen last week, that was 2300 means that what you could see at 300 feet, I could see at 20.
There you go.
So let's see. So anyway, so we got so the walls of a Yurt are made of oh shoot, what's the word? Lattice.
Right.
That unfolds. So
correct.
When it's all together, it was maybe 6 feet long, but then you expand it out like those I don't like this analogy probably wouldn't work for anybody born more recently than the 70s. But you remember those 70s like coffee mug hangers that would like scrunch in and out.
Put them on the wall.
It's like that you hang on the wall and I don't know what they're called, but anyway, it's like that. But when it stretches out to 75 feet because that's the circumference of a 24-foot circle. So anyway, so we basically got the door and the lattice up Friday night, which involved. Oh, I guess we didn't actually do it for that, but we also put on all the braces, all the like metal brackets for all the sides and rafters and everything else. So it was,
right.
We had 4 drills going, basically putting on all the hardware. And anyway, we got a couple hours done, and then Saturday morning, we got the rafters up, which was the hard thing. Trying to get once we had 4 of them up, it's good because it's kind of like the whole thing's built on the arch principle. So if you can get that top, pressure in, you're good from there. So we got that up, and then a friend of mine showed up to help about 9:30 on Saturday. So there were 6 of us, and the hardest part was getting up the actual fabric on the roof. That required. I was happy to have 6 of us there doing that, and but yeah, so we were done by 4 on Saturday. Not too bad.
Nice.
Not too bad.
You are now the proud owner of a yurt. That's exciting.
I am.
A constructed yurt, no less.
It was very nice. Once the roof was up, that there was actually a place that was out of the rain. Yeah. So, and yeah, then I after the yurt guy left, I ran down to the store and grabbed a new door handle set and a lock box and a new set of hinges, and I kind of did a few kind of knick-knack things after that, and then went ahead and camped up there Saturday night as well, and came back Sunday afternoon. So it was a good weekend, and so basically 3 weekends of my work, basically, and plus paying the yurt guy, plus buying the yurt, but a weekend of deconstruction and then 2 weekends of construction. And hopefully I will have many years of enjoyment, not having to like drag a camper out. So I don't know. We'll see. More to be done because there's no power, there's no water, there's no, blah 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 blah. There's always stuff to be done, but it's fun stuff.
Yeah, you need a place for the TV and PlayStation apparently with the John camping. School of camping.
Yeah. Well. I do not intend on leaving any sort of electronics or anything valuable in said yurt.
Right.
Seeing as said razor blade could provide entrance. Anyway, it's okay. I guess you'd have to like also saw through the lattice, but please don't.
Anyway.
All right, that's enough about that.
All right. Speaking of honor among thieves.
Oh, look at you with the segue.
There's my segue.
Speaking of honor among thieves, okay.
Did you see this Krebs site? This one is more entertaining than.
I don't think I did.
Anyways, apparently there is a phishing site. So there is an underground website called Brian's Club, which is modeled after Brian Krebs, or named after Brian Krebs. That is, an underground bazaar for stolen credit and identity data. And so the title of the article on Krebs is "Phishing Sites Targeting Scammers and Thieves," which honor among thieves. Brian Krebs thought it was funny that some person contacted him and said, "Hey, I made a deposit into my wallet on your site, but nothing's shown up yet, and I want to know why. And apparently it's because there is a scammer
Wow.
who is targeting, or, someone who is targeting scammers and phishing scammers to hand over Bitcoin or whatnot to do their malicious activity. So Brian Krebs has a back and forth, a little bit back and forth with the guy, and then talks about this Brian's Club website for hackers to collect, to get stolen credit cards and that kind of information. But apparently the guy had actually paid. And so Brian Krebs goes through and
man,
shows about where he paid, what the website is, where the fake scammer site for the scam site, the stolen stuff site was, and tried to convince the what did he call him? He called him the newbie scammer, or the wannabe scammer. Gave him some
unwary scammers.
Yeah,
I see, unwary scammer. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, anyways, I just thought this was funny that even, and this poor guy who he's calling Mitch doesn't even believe him when he says, "Hey, it's you. It's not actually me. It's not my website. You're getting scammed.
Wow.
You're getting scammed by the scammers. You're trying to do a scam, and you're getting scammed. So, hey, there you go." So apparently this is common because, of course, why not?
Yeah. So
that's a fun article. If you haven't seen it, I would read it just for giggles.
Wow.
So there's article number 1, Honor Among Thieves. All right. So then my second article is a bit more interesting. It's a Wired article, and it's research from Black Hat and the DEF CON security conferences in Las Vegas. This one is about phishing emails that are completely done via AI, created by AI. So, one of the things it talks about is researchers have long debated, I'm quoting the article now, researchers have long debated whether it would be worth the effort for scammers to train machine learning algorithms that could generate compelling phishing messages. Mass phishing messages are simple and formulaic after all, and they're already highly effective. Highly targeted and tailored spear phishing messages are more labor intensive to compose, though, and that's where machine learning might come in handy. And so the Singapore government's technology agency presented an experiment in which they sent targeted phishing emails that they crafted and then others generated by an AI as a service platform to 200 of their colleagues. And the messages contain links that weren't obviously actually malicious, just simply reported back, click through to the researchers. And they were surprised to find that more people clicked on the links in the AI generated messages than in the human written ones, and not just barely, but by a significant margin.
Interesting.
So, the article is really long because it goes into a lot of detail about OpenAI's GPT-3 platform and a number of other things like that. And the concern over if you have AI as a service, and a lot of some of the article talks a little bit about some of them don't even, the AI as a service providers, they don't even bother trying to verify your email address. They give you a free, amount trying to, get customers.
Mm-hmm.
And so scammers could very easily just cycle through a whole bunch of free accounts and generate all sorts of phishing emails that are way more effective, apparently, based on this research, than if they were to try to do it by hand, which makes total sense to me, because You've seen the phishing emails that you get.
Oh, sure.
Typically, they're not done good English. You get an AI to do your English for you, or whatever your language, target your language, then you sound probably a little bit more legit. And per this research, much more likely to get somebody to click on it.
Multilingual.
Uh-huh.
I'm sure even interesting. And this says it uses GPT-3.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So there you go. That's the second one. Phishing emails are here to stay, and pretty soon they're just going to get better and better as machine learning models get trained on how to write better and better phishing emails. That's the whole point of AI, right? To do a repetitive task better.
Oh, thank you for the depressing note.
All right, well, cheer me up, John. What do you have?
Oh, is this going to cheer you up? Oh, blockchain?
We haven't talked blockchain in a while.
We haven't talked blockchain in like a very long while, like years maybe. I don't know. It seems like a couple of years ago we were talking blockchain all the time.
Yeah.
Okay. I assume you read about the poly hack.
I did.
The first link, I'm going to put 2 links in here for this. So the first link is a link to a Twitter thread that outlines how this hack occurred. So I guess I didn't actually say what it was, but so there is a service called the Poly Network, I guess, and this I think the sense of this, or the purpose of this, is to allow you to essentially trade across different coin networks. So Bitcoin and Ethereum and others. But the somebody stole, quote unquote stole, transferred over $600 million worth of cryptocurrency using legitimate functions in the Poly network.
Exploiting a flaw in the code, let's call it.
It works as designed.
Exactly.
So like this is where, code that like write once code really hard to get right, especially when it's open. Anyway, well, I mean, not that. Sorry, I don't mean to imply that open's a bad thing. I think that open is the way to get all of the issues discovered and found.
Yep.
But open is also, it's hard when there's such large consequences for getting something wrong.
Right.
So what did they do here? So the thing is that they basically, if I'm understanding this correctly, and what I link to here in the notes is to a thread, Twitter thread, where there's a guy basically walking down the logic and with links to some of the network functions. But there is a contract. So I assume this is all on Ethereum, for Ethereum contracts. But there's a contract that contains the list of public keys that are allowed to call another contract.
Yep. And
somebody realized that they could send a message to this ETH cross-chain data contract that was actually owned by this ETH cross-chain manager. And so this ETH cross-chain data contract was able to call functions that basically, would transfer the coins. So if he could essentially bypass the validation, he could get this contract, this function, to call another function with its own rights, basically like an escalation of privilege attack, instead of his own, and basically transfer money, quote unquote, held in a wallet that wasn't his. Mm-hmm. And the net of this is that. So the quote was, so someone realized they could send a cross-chain message directly to the ETH cross-chain data contract. What good does that do them? Well, guess which contract owned the ETH cross-chain data contract? Yep, the ETH cross-chain manager. The first 4 bytes of the transaction input data is called the signature hash or SIG hash. It's a short piece of information that tells a Solidity contract what you're trying to do. And so blah, 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 there's some validation that it, quote, it will only call the contract function that corresponded to the following SIG hash. But there's the part of what's getting hashed is user input. So all the attacker had to do was figure out a way to create a collision on a 4-byte signature. And, creating a 4-byte signature collision is, 4 bytes is not that much data. So
interesting.
The news today, just late breaking news today, is that this person returned about half of the money so far. So Poly Network put out a letter yesterday saying, please return the money. So it was what was it? It was 613. So the second link I'll put in here is to a Reuters article from this afternoon that says says, quote, hackers behind one of the biggest ever cryptocurrency heists have returned more than a third of the 613 million in digital coins they stole.
Wow.
So 260 of the stolen 260 million has been returned, but 353 is still outstanding. So I had intended on finding another article about this and that, talking about what was going on here. But then I saw this, that it had actually been returned. And I was like, oh, that's actually somewhat shocking, to be honest. Yeah. There's a quote in here that the hacker said, I always intended to return it. I'm not really very motivated by money. Okay. Probably also then. Motivated by people hunt down. I would assume people hunt down hundreds of millions of dollars worth of stuff if there's traceability, and there's a lot of that. That's actually the last thing I pulled out of here was that there's an awful lot of scrutiny on these blockchain transfers these days. And it's since it's all in the open, at some point you have to, translate it, off the blockchain, cash in.
Yep.
And or spend some of it at some point. And the quote here is. This is from Tom Robinson, co-founder of Elliptic. So the decision to return the money could have been prompted by headaches of laundering stolen crypto on such a scale. Even if you can steal crypto assets, laundering them and cashing out is extremely difficult due to the transparency of the blockchain and the broad use of blockchain analytics by financial institutions. So, Anyway, that was my first one. So 613 million stolen, 260 million returned. I'm assuming that he may not be totally motivated by money, but I would assume that he's looking for a finder's fee or something.
Yeah,
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Okay. My second article, I wasn't sure if I should even talk about this or not, but it is probably the biggest security news story of the week. Yeah. Is the Apple's CSAM child safety initiatives. So, I've read a couple things about this. I have not spent as much time as I think it would require to have a fully formed opinion on it. Reading the specific details. But I kind of pulled out 2 links to put in here. To a couple of articles that I thought were thoughtful. So the first one is to a daringfireball.net article that kind of gives an overview. So what is it? So Apple basically announced 3 new features in iOS that are going to be in iOS 15. The first is a communication tool that will enable parents to get alarms when something suspicious is happening. It wasn't clear to me what quote unquote suspicious means, but it says, let's see. If a child sends or receives and chooses to view an image that triggers a warning, the notification is sent from the child's device to the parent's devices. Apple itself is not notified, nor is law enforcement. The parental notifications are only for children 12 or younger in a family iCloud account, and parents do not have the option of receiving notifications for teenagers, although teenagers can receive the content warnings on their devices. So, seems that's probably the middling controversial of them. The second one is the sorry, I'm trying to remember what CSAM stands for. CSAM stands for Child Sexual Abuse Material. So, the second item here is about the actual CSAM feature that's caused the most controversy so far. And then the third one is, it says updates to Siri and Search to provide parents and children expanded information and help if they encounter unsafe situations. Siri and Search will also intervene when users try to search for CSAM related topics. So that one, the third one seems like the most uncontroversial one of these, but the middle one, the CSAM, this is the biggest, the most controversial thing in here, because it is searching. It's not analyzing photos for content. Like it's not using AI to detect child nudity or anything like that. But it is using fingerprinting on device, not in iCloud, to determine whether or not the images in the photo library are copies of known child abuse material. So there's another nonprofit that is funded by the U.S. government that is the only entity in the United States legally authorized to hold onto this sort of material, and they have it's not that Apple has all these images. They have fingerprints of the images, and then they have a database of fingerprints that are going to be embedded in iOS 15, and then it will be used to match on device for sort of known child abuse material. And then if there are some number, the number clearly isn't 1, but it doesn't say what number the number is, 2, 5, 10, who knows? Apple knows. If there's more than a certain number of matches, then basically metadata about those potential matches, including its some form of the implication was sort of a thumbprint or a low res of the actual image is visible and will be escalated to Apple to potentially send to law enforcement.
Right.
So, there's there's been all sorts of valid, I would say, commentary online about this feature, and on both. And I don't know. I don't want to make this a both sides kind of thing, but just really pointing out the ways, the things that most resonate with me are ways in which this can be abused. This feature could be abused by, let's say, less democratic regimes around the world in which Apple continues to sell their devices and do have, very strong control over what Apple will or won't do. Things like this can be abused. That being said, the second thread that I want to put in here is a thread that was done by a Twitter user called Pwn All the Things, who I think I've been following for a very long time. But this thread was very, I thought very illuminating, although you should also then go read Matthew Green's response to this thread, who's another security researcher I think we've mentioned on the podcast before. So Pwn All the Things comment is, fundamentally, the release of this technology is attempting to find a way to hold strong to, moral, ethical principles that are in conflict. The first being that child abuse and the child abuse image problem is real and large. The large part there is where Matthew Green is asking for, can we please use something other than automated reporting to figure out really how big of a problem it is? But the automated detection of this type of material, at least, is significant. How many of those are false positives? How many of those are true positives? I don't know. I'm not in this world. I really don't want to be in this world. I don't want to be even close to this world. Seems like a very terrible, terrible world. But it's real. It's real to some extent. And the first principle is that it's real. It's the quote here is that it's real and very large, involving extraordinary damage to a depressingly large number of children. So, first principle, that's terrible. Second principle, Apple in general doesn't want to hold user data. So, there can be a debate held on why they don't want to hold user data, whether what they say is the real reason or not. But in general, Apple has engineered security features of iCloud and iPhones such that the amount of data that Apple actually has access to is extraordinarily small. And witness the number of companies that have sprung up to help law enforcement decrypt iPhones and stuff like that. Remember the couple of years ago, the government lawsuits to force Apple to turn over or potentially engineer a backdoor into iOS, et cetera, et cetera. So the problem is, how can you honor both those principles? And it wasn't clear from this. I don't know if there's a law that you have to be able to scan this. I just don't know that. But the fundamentally, then there's a conflict. You can't scan data that you've engineered yourself to not have access to.
Right.
And the thread here, the reason I really liked this Pwn All the Things thread is that he says most, or they say, I guess I don't know if it's a man or a woman, most companies resolved this conflict in principles by dropping one of them. Some might not do the scanning, treating the social harm, this is a quote, treating the social harm as an externality or pretending it's not real. Others quietly drop the plans to not fully encrypt. And the second is the lowest risk for companies. Other companies shove all the data through some form of CSAM scanning. There's a quote here that says it's usually via photo DNA. That it is this activity is uncontroversial and rarely publicized, so most people don't know about it, and nobody complains.
Yep.
If you drop the first one, so you refuse to scan, then it's the quote here is it brings you not into just conflict with authorities, but into conflict with civil society itself. Because the harm is real, widespread, and at some point the dam breaks and the company has to abandon the second principle if their platform is being used as a way of harboring and promulgating something that is so anathema to society. So, Apple's approach is trying to bridge the gap and maintain or avoid abandoning either principle. Scan the content prior to upload on their own service so that the end-to-end encryption remains, but that the the ability to scan for this type of material is done sort of without violating the second principle. So I don't have all the answers to this one, but this is probably the single biggest security story of the week, I think. A lot of the stuff I've seen. And so maybe a depressing episode today, because this is all like terrible stuff. But
yeah,
there you go. That was my second article. You can go read the links to the two two links that I'll post in here. But I think it's I like to see a company trying to do something different.
Yep.
So I don't know. I'm not on the yay, this is the right thing to do totally, but I'm I don't know. I don't know fundamentally.
On that note,
There you go. Okay. All right. So totally depressing. Now we have to transition. Where's my nice segue into something fun? Segue man.
I don't have one, but I do have a cool article that I found on a carnivorous plant, a flower that's actually carnivorous. And what's interesting about this, it's the first new carnivorous plant to be discovered in about 20 years. So this is not something that is found. So there is a flower that grows in the Pacific Northwest that was first described in scientific literature in 1879, but no one had known that it is actually carnivorous until some researchers were digging around doing something. So the quote here is, "We had no idea it was carnivorous," says Sean Graham, the botanist with the University of British Columbia. "This was not found in some exotic tropical location, but really right on our doorstep in Vancouver. You could literally walk out from Vancouver to the field site. Fewer than 1,000 plant species are carnivorous, and these plants tend to live in places with abundant sun and water, but nutrient-poor soil." So he kind of the researchers kind of stumbled across this while they were doing some other things and noticed that the plant stem was sticky and there were insects stuck to it. And one of the researchers light bulb, moment goes off in the head and says, "Ah, I wonder if this could be a sign that it's carnivorous, because most carnivorous plants have, there's a leaf or something,
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
chomp it. Everybody's familiar with the Venus flytrap, that something along those lines. So the cool thing, I thought, that how they discovered this is they took and fed fruit flies nitrogen 15 isotopes so that
Oh.
when the plant digested it, they could track to see, hey, does that nitrogen 15 isotope show up now in the plant? And sure enough, it did. It does. And apparently that's how they
That's genius.
work it for other carnivorous plants. And one of the things that came out of this is that, all the other, I think I started to mention this, all the other carnivorous plants capture prey with the help of modified leaves, and nobody has thought about looking at the flower stalk as the primary mode of carnivory, which I didn't know that was a word.
Ooh, that's a word.
Go. Carnivory. So it was kind of a surprise. And the reason why is most carnivorous plants keep their traps far away from the flowers, so there's no accidental killing of the pollinators like bees and butterflies. But apparently, from the looks of this case, the stem is only sticky enough to ensnare really, really small bugs. So bees and butterflies, things that are involved in pollination, aren't affected by it, which then, of course, leads the researcher to think, I wonder how many other plants have sticky stems, and maybe there are a whole group of carnivorous plants that we've never discovered before. And I just thought this was fascinating.
That's totally awesome.
From the aspect of we can always discover new things. I mean, these plants have been around, like I said, they first talked about this plant in 1879, and just now they've discovered, hey, this plant is involved in carnivory. I got to start working that word into my vocabulary.
Okay. All right. Carnivory.
Anyways, there you go. That's my something fun for this week. Carnivorous plants.
All right. That's awesome. I don't recognize it though, so I don't know if I've ever seen it. I live in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
I am evidently not in a good mood tonight, Eric, because my something fun is not particularly fun.
Oh.
So I'm playing tonight. The role of Eric will be played by John King. So I really something funs. I liked this thread though. So this was this is a thread that I had kind of so it's a Twitter thread from this, what's the date today? So from 2 days ago. So the UN released a new climate report this week that is not encouraging.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's another kind of big thing that's happening here. But I like this thread. It's not a particularly uplifting thread, but it is a realistic thread. So, at the end of the day, the level of change that we would need to do to actually prevent, or it's too late to prevent, severely mitigate climate change, the impacts of climate change, are beyond our ability as a society, as a world, to do. We can't even get people to wear a mask and get a shot when it will save them and their children's lives. So there's what's the odds of our being able to come together to tackle, a even bigger problem that requires actual sacrifice.
Right.
So, that's the reality that we live in. So the comments here. So this Cassandra mode of climate journalism will continue. Emissions got nowhere near zero, even at the peak of COVID shutdown. So you can't call for if the world managed to stop adding CO2 to the atmosphere by 2050. So the quote is, if the world managed to stop adding CO2 to the atmosphere by 2050, we could stabilize the warming at 1.5 degrees Celsius, which is still high enough that it will cause devastation in many parts of the world. Yeah. So the quote here is, I'm critical of this mode of covering climate because I find it paralyzing and totalizing. Even a World War II scale transformation of the global economy in a context of complete international agreement and cooperation would not be enough to get to zero net emissions. And then this was I think this was the link that actually made me laugh. But what we need instead is a climate version of the Serenity poem. God grant us the courage to electrify the things we can, the serenity to accept emissions from the things we can't, and the wisdom to pursue carbon sequestration and geoengineering projects that make a difference. I really like that. So I mean, I feel like I at least style myself as a practical person. And, so what can we actually do about it? And so he goes on. This is I don't think I actually said the account is called Pinboard, and he runs a web service. One of the things he says, since people ask, one approach I really like is to aggressively fight air pollution, whose impacts on public health are immeasurably greater than climate change. Kind of ties into your something fun from last week for the year the Earth changed.
The year the Earth changed.
Yeah, which I haven't watched yet, but I it's been on my mind. So it says the changes needed to fight air pollution, such as moving to renewables and nuclear energy, are congruent with reducing CO2 emissions. So the more general principle is ways to align climate mitigations with tangible improvements in people's daily life through cheaper power, clean air, and the ability to get incredibly prosperous inventing and manufacturing stuff that gets us to global cooling. If there's no pathway to global carbon sequestration, trillionaires, who we can all hate on for being selfish plutocrats who only cooled the planet on the backs of the working man, then we're doing it wrong. I'm sorry. It's like sarcasm inception. Anyway.
This whole thread is,
right? It
floats around that sarcasm inception.
It's good, but it's,
it's depressing.
Then, it sort of ends towards the end, at least. It's like, we're also overlooking that the good Lord gave us a whole backup continent just for this eventuality. Let's tap the brakes on escaping to Mars and figure out where the best sight lines for a condo will be once the ice melts in Antarctica.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I liked this thread. So apocalyptic climate coverage is only going to encourage denialism and apathy, as well as a backlash once people notice their lives go on pretty much the same as before in a warming world. Yeah. We have a chance to get this right and channel people's alarm in a more constructive direction. There you go. Anyway, I liked this thread. That's my something fun for this week. And I get to choose what I find fun, even if it's not really fun.
That's been my excuse.
That is. Yep. Anyway.
Sounds good.
Well, I hope that you have a good week. I will talk to you next week.
All right.
Have a good night,
John.
Eric.
We'll see you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.